partnerships. We work with about 6 organizations serving 3 countries. And we learned an awful lot from that before we actually built things and tried to scale it. So when we got ready to roll out in 2006, we really focused on 4 things. The first question we tried to answer was, should we partner or should we go it alone? So, here we were offering a web-based service. A nonprofit could come to this website and kind of shop in an e-commerce environment for technology offers, especially for nonprofits. And we could have said, hey, you're in Canada, you can go ahead to that site in English and you can place an order. And people all over the world were going to the web and even accessing content in English and transacting. But we said, that's kind of not really what's at the heart of this program. Really, the way the program was built was around a model that allowed us to really build resources locally and help the community strengthen itself and contribute more. And so we really felt like we didn't understand the environments in other countries. We didn't know who was the equivalent of a nonprofit in the United States. We didn't know exactly what it would take for technology to be selected well and used well and for people to build a community around it. And so we decided that it would be important for those kind of reasons to partner. And we also decided from the point of view of just that, kind of basic local language, in time zone support, ability to convene people face to face, and process payments and things that were required to run the program. So we then thought about, how do we need to change our business model to make this work? So one of the things we did was we sat down with the first 6 partners and really looked at all the activities required from the point of view of working with a corporation to put a program onto the TechSoup platform, to the point of view of organizations learning about it and using the technology and everything in between. And we really decided that we really thought the same basic business model would work, meaning it's a social enterprise, a nonprofit pays a small fee for what they're going to receive by what they request. And the donors allow us to do that in order to sustain the program, but we also do it with the idea of reinvesting those resources back into the additional resources on the platform, like content and community and events and things that help people really get the most from the programs. And then we also use those same resources to expand the donors and add others to the mix and find out what organizations need and continue to grow and diversify that. So we thought that model would work well in other countries, and then we kind of had a couple of basic tenets. And one was that we wanted the majority of funds paid in a given country by the community organizations to stay in that country. And we wanted the partner organization that we would work with to really reinvest that money in order to deepen the resources in the local community and to make the pie bigger for everybody by partnering and having the value of partnering with other players in the community. So we didn't want it to be sort of one organization getting all the benefit. We wanted to make a model where everyone was stronger and we were actually contributing, working together with the corporations as well as the partners, as well as the community organizations being served. The third area that we focused on is kind of where do we go first and where do we go second. The world is quite big and diverse. If you ask yourself, who is working for social good and could use help with technology capacity, well, that doesn't really help you too much because the answer is everybody everywhere pretty much. So then you could say, well, where would the corporations go? And a lot of times people would ask us along the way, well, how are you deciding which countries to go to? And it really isn't like we had an exact list of criteria, but we more really used a collective process. In a way, it was a crowd kind of that looked at this equation. And we saw where we had demand and interest on the part of community organizations. We saw where corporations were interested. We have 101 corporations and providers of technology on TechSoup, and all of them have different places of interest. Some of it, of course, aligns with where they're doing business, and some of them wanted to serve organizations in many places or have a particular area where they wanted to focus. And other times we thought about where do we know there's a partner organization who really would like to do this work and work with us, that we saw local capacity for it. So all of those factors went into us deciding kind of where to go first and where to go second. It's a little bit opportunistic, but I think in a good way. We were not very rigid about it, and at the same time we didn't take on things that were just impossible to do. So for example, early on we wanted to do some programs in Ukraine, and we had a lot of interest from a couple of the donor partners to do it, but the local currency was was very unstable at the time. There were no payment systems that would really work, and so we ended up aborting that and picking it up a few years later and really shaping a different kind of program in order to be able to serve youth parents in Singapore. And then the fourth thing we focused on was the technology ourselves to support this model and this business model. And this was an interesting evolution. So where we started here is after working with those initial organizations, we knew it was important to have everyone on one platform, and so we decided to create a platform for that purpose. But we also wanted it to be something that the local partners had a lot of control over. We wanted them to have local resources to support it. We wanted them to feel that they could use it in other ways and add other programming using the platform in addition to what we were doing together. So we developed a Drupal platform. It was open source. The code could be contributed to, and we thought it would be a lightweight footprint for them. And that's been in use since 2006, so it's done its job. But the truth is that where it's evolved to these days and where technology has evolved to makes it a bit of a cumbersome system to support. And in reality, most of our partners did not prove to have that much capacity themselves to support a platform. With the evolution of the cloud, etc., it really is makes much more sense for us to have a kind of a software as a service model that allows them to configure what they need, but allows us to manage it in a lower cost way centrally. And so we're moving from where we started to that kind of a model, and we'll have that in place in the next few months. But that was how we sort of thought about the decision at the time we were making it. So those were the four factors that I thought would be interesting perhaps to highlight. And I want to say when we go from here now, okay, we're in 121 countries. You know, as we said, we've distributed almost $5 billion worth of goods and services to the community. But it's just the beginning in a whole lot of ways. You know, now we are going to be in, I think, 240 countries by July of this year. And we're not going to go exactly country by country as we did before, but instead our new version of a minimum viable product is to say what is different today is that we've got this amazing network in place. And they have a lot of capacity and a lot of knowledge and a common set of practices and tools for working together. They work in a lot of languages that are also relevant in other parts of the world, and some of them have their own networks and operate in more places than the places where they're located. So we're really leveraging the network to first go out more broadly into the other countries. We think it makes a lot of sense because some countries will never have a high volume, so it'll be hard to just sustain their program if we look at it solely as a single market, so to speak. So this way we can get some leverage across the network, and then we can kind of determine over time where it makes more sense to have a more robust set of activities locally. And so that's kind of where we are in that process right now. And it's very exciting to leverage what we've done and take it elsewhere, because again, it goes back to that overall goal of it's not that there are still people doing social good who can use this kind of help and who can help each other better if there are places where there are resources for them and easier ways for them to connect to those resources. The other thing that we're doing as part of this expansion and this way of operating that we've got in place today is we're removing the fact that today donors will put goods in our catalog and we'll do the validation of nonprofit status and eligibility and make the connection happen. Well, those same services can be provided even for donors who offer things on their own websites or in other ways to connect with them. So, for example, we've been working with Google to help their Google for Nonprofits offers be in 5 countries. And we do work with the World Bank to help their employees connect for volunteering projects with nonprofit organizations. So that suite of services around validation is something that is the capacity our network can help bring to things like bringing human capital, volunteering, cash, other kind of resources to the sector that are also required beyond technology to do the work that we're all trying to do. So just to summarize a bit, keys to the success of our scaling are summarized, and I'll touch base about them here, but I just want to also say that even if you're not going global or you don't aspire to be in every country, or maybe you aspire to just be in another city, or maybe you want to take a program to a new set of constituents or customers that you haven't been serving, I think a lot of the same kind of points will apply here. First is the idea of testing and learning. It's definitely, it will help you when you do start scaling and making an investment. Be clear about who you're serving. And in our case, we were really clear about the community and based our values and rules on that. But we also wanted to strengthen the partner network. We also wanted to make it easy and good for the corporations, because if we do it cooperatively, everyone benefits. We've also done a lot of work to nurture our partner network, so it's not simply transactional. They're there when we need a transaction to be carried out, and when we have to say, hey, this corporate partner wants it done exactly this way everywhere on this day, and we have to sometimes operate that way in lockstep. But there are a lot of things we can do that can be driven by the partners themselves, or groups of partners who have their own plans and their own interests and see value in being networked and connected. And then, as I mentioned, we're constantly looking for opportunities to layer on other programs, things like our NetSquared program or our NGO Source program, if you've heard of that. The first being a community of people working locally around for social good, who are interested in using technology for social good. And the second being a program around helping U.S. foundations more easily get their cash grant making in the hands of organizations around the world from a validation point of view. So we're really focused on this kind of collective impact and this way of doing things in a cooperative way that, again, is not about TechSoup, but is about making a more rich resource bed and a bigger pie for everyone working for good, and minimizing duplicative costs. And that's kind of where we see the future, is we feel like a lot of what's been put together, a lot of the 600 and some thousand nonprofit organizations that come to TechSoup or its partners for resources, and the corporate partners can really collectively come together to even create more value and to innovate and to connect with each other. And as we diversify resource and offers and solutions, will really help them do the work that they do in the world, which is really what our objective is to help them be the best they can be. And that's it for my remarks. So I don't know, I think there may be a question or two, but thank you for your attention.